Hello friends, Donna Kato here. Welcome to my studio, welcome to the classroom, and welcome to this class. I call this class Jumpstart Jelly Rolls, and here you see my cane box with some of my Jumpstart Jelly Rolls that we're going to be making. Now, I actually had done this class and I was selling it. I posted it. I don't know how anybody found it because I never did much promotion of it. I just kind of put it up there, and every now and then somebody would just kind of stumble across the class. Anyway, since I did sell it, I can't just put it out there in the open. So that's why it's the perfect place to put this is in the classroom. Now, what you're going to see, what follows, is actually the class that I redid. I thought, I can do better. You guys see that movie, The Stepford Wives? I can do better. So I redid the whole class. And that's what you'll be seeing. As a matter of fact, the project is different too, that is attached to the class. In the original, I did a pin, like 5 discs in a pin, and now we're going to be making a chain necklace. Now, the actual process to make the chain itself, I already did post on the open channel, but we're going to cover it again. Now, in this class, Jelly Roll, one of the first things you ever learn to make, right? If you're caning, Jelly Roll, Bullseye. These are very basic canes, but just because they're basic canes doesn't mean they possess potential to be so much more and to give you so many more options. That's what this class is about. We're going to start with a balanced jelly roll. We are going to move on to the broken line jelly roll, which is what this is. I love this. It kind of looks like Mosaic or Cobblestone. Then we're going to move on to what I call the black hole jelly roll. These are 2 versions of that cane. This has more white, this has more black, but this was actually inspired by meteor showers. I know. So we're going to make that. And then we're going to finish up our canes with the Snail Jellyroll. I really like this, quite easy to make. Just imagine what this would look like if you had a Skinner blend running through this jelly roll. I think it'd be really beautiful. Okay, so once we make our various and sundry canes, what we're going to do is turn them into this chain. Okay, this was the original, and I liked it very much. I still like it, but there's a problem, and that is you see the black on the back. So we're not doing that. Ours are going to be 2-sided like this. So we have pattern on both sides. I love this necklace. I actually, I don't wear all my jewelry. This is just such a staple, has become a staple, such a standard, because I wear a lot of white shirts, black pants, black shoes with white soles, that kind of thing. So it's really perfect for me. It's perfect for my wardrobe and quite wearable because it's lightweight and it never turns to the wrong side, because there is no wrong side. So I think I have covered what we're going to cover. This class is perfect for beginners and advanced beginners. It is something I think you're going to like. It's not going to stress you out. And I think you're going to produce some canes that you'll be able to use in much of your work. So let us get started. Now, before we begin making our canes, we have to talk about something else. We have to talk about conditioning. Conditioning is something that you must do regardless of the clay brand you use. Now, I use Kato Polyclay. It is an extremely strong clay, which is also something else. Please, please, please use a strong clay. Do not use a clay that is not durable. You'll cry. You'll work so hard and then something will break and you will cry. Trust me. So anyway, we're going to condition. Now, some clays are easy to condition. You look at it and it conditions. You pick it up in your hand, you go gush, gush, and it's done. My clay's not like that. Kato Polyclay isn't like that. It requires a little more work to condition it. Now, is it worth conditioning? Is it worth that little extra effort? In my opinion, it is, because it's easier to actually handle once it's conditioned. This is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, though, and I would highly encourage you to try as many different brands as you can. I use Kato Polyclay. It has my name on it. In the interest of total transparency, I tell you, that Kato is me. So there's a good reason why I use Kato Polyclay, aside from the fact that I love it. Okay? Kato. I'm not telling you I own the company, because I don't. But, yeah, that is me. Okay, so let's get started on conditioning. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand this block up on end, and I'm going to use my clay blade and cut straight through. Now, some teachers would freak out and say, don't ever do that. And they tell you, don't ever do that, because you might end up with some of this plastic in your clay. Well, I just make sure there is no plastic in the clay. See, it's like these little bits fly off. You're going to have to make sure you get rid of those and that none of them remain in the clay. So you just look at each piece. Why do I do it this way? Because I'm impatient. Okay. Which is something you will discover in taking classes with me. I will take a lot of time in some things, but in other areas, I'm cleaning my acrylic rod, because this sucker, this picks up clay that you don't even know. It's like, hello, clay. So just wipe it off. Make sure it's clean. I'm going to stand up for this, because I'm going to take this clay and I'm going to roll it and press until this is just a bit thicker than the thickest setting of my pasta machine. You can see it's not difficult to do. It is not difficult to do. It's another thing. I hum, I sing in classes. I will talk a lot. You will feel like you're sitting with me, because honestly, I feel like you are. Okay. Woohoo. Okay. Now, why am I doing this? You might be asking. I do this because I don't want the clay to crumble. And this is like pre-compression. If I just took that clay as I had it, without doing this, you know what happens? I roll it through the pasta machine and I get about a jillion crumbles underneath the rollers. I don't want crumbles. So this is preconditioning. Not a big deal. All right. So this is what we have. Hello. So it's about half the thickness it originally was. Now I'm going to roll it through my pasta machine through the thickest setting. I am sitting down. Whoops. Thickest. All right, let's look at it. This is what unconditioned clay looks like. Okay, so it's not really shiny. It's shiny in spots, but mostly, see these streaks like that? That's just dry ingredients and wet ingredients separating. So, of course, these dry streaks are what is dry in the clay. You see, polymer clay is composed of both wet and dry ingredients. Over time, they separate. It's called advancing. And after they separate, you know what? This is what conditioning is. We're remixing everything back together. Just like it was when we took it out of the mixer at the factory. Okay. Ta-da! Now I'm going to reset my machine. Setting number 2. I have skipped one setting. My atlas starts at 0. It runs to 9. I'm going to just place one edge on the rollers and roll through. Okay, now this is the back side. You can still see those little streaks. Now this, that's from the white clay I had rolled through before. So in order to prevent that from happening, I'm going to take more. I'm going to take my towel and I'm going to run this underneath the rollers and pick up anything and see it looks gray. Just to remove it. Okay, that'll help. All right, now I'm going to take this sheet and now I'm going to fold it. I'm going to place the fold on the rollers and I'm going to roll through. Like so. Now, this is not conditioned at all. I have to do quite a bit more folding and rolling. Now, these streaks and all of this stuff is telling me that the clay is particularly cold. Listen, I work in my basement. It's got to be 50 degrees down here. It's always cold. And so my clay is always cold too. So, you know, it'd probably be better if I worked in Miami because my clay would be warmer. But right now, as I condition, I'm also fighting the fact that it's cold. It's cold. I'm cold. My basement is cold. My marble is cold. So in a situation like this, I can speed up the process if I reset the machine to a thinner setting. So now let's say I'm at setting 3. And without folding, I've rolled it through. Now I will continue folding and rolling at this thinner setting. I could make it even thinner, and I think it would go faster. But at some point, it becomes very long and a little more difficult to handle. So let me continue with this, and I will fold and roll. This time I will roll this way. Maybe next time I fold it the other way. There's no like set way you have to do it. But I would say it's probably beneficial to do it both ways. So this time this way, pull it out. Next time I will fold it the other way, back and forth like that. And I think that also helps remix all the ingredients. So I will be back after I've rolled this through about 10 times. All right, so I rolled this through at that thinner setting, and then I folded it and I rolled it through the thicker setting again. So this thickness is the same as this. Now I cut this off sort of to show you what it looked like when we started. See how it's very shiny in spots, isn't it? Now, once it's conditioned, it's got a sheen to it, but it's more like a satin sheen, actually. And what you will, and I wish you could feel it, the biggest difference is probably the way it feels. The clay develops a very kind of supple feel to it. Softer, one might say. Well, actually, you know what? I would say it's less brittle. This has a more brittle feeling than this, and that makes sense. Totally. So this is conditioned and this is not. Now, when you roll your clay through thick settings, frequently, very frequently, what happens is you get these ridges in the sheet. Okay, so for our purposes, those ridges don't make any difference. If we were going to do a cane and not thin it out at all, and it had ridges like this, doesn't matter. But sometimes you want to get rid of them, and it's not a big deal. All you do is take, and I will take my acrylic rod, and I'm telling you, when you work with clay, you will find that little bits of clay mysteriously appear, and they stick to things like your acrylic rod. See, look, a mysterious blue spot. And inevitably, they transfer onto clay. And most of the time, it's white. All right, so let's get rid of those. Not a big deal. You're just going to take like an acrylic rod. You could even use like a brass tube and roll. And I'm rolling perpendicular to those little ridges. And that's all it takes, you know. I've had beginning students ask me a lot, you know, how do I get rid of them? How come they form? Blah, blah. And I'm like, well, it's what the pasta machine does. I'm sorry. But the solution is simple enough. Okay? No ridges or faint ridges. We are ready. So what I would like you to do is condition a block of your black and a condition of your white. And condition a block of your white. Now, between the colors, take a towel, run it under the rollers, just as I did before, because you don't want to contaminate the white with the black or the black with the white. Okay? So just remember to do that. After you've done that, you're ready to start the Balanced Jelly Roll. All right, so our clay is conditioned. Now, what you see before you is actually 2 ounces of black and 2 ounces of white. 2 ounce is the package size. All right, I have 2 machines. Well, I have more than 2 machines. So what I will be doing is conditioning and using all the black in one machine sitting next to me and the white in another, because it's very difficult to keep white clean. I think we know that. You know, if you've worked with polymer clay at all, I think you know that. Okay, so this is a ruler I use a lot. It's 2 inches wide. It's perfect. So this is what we're going to be using and doing for every cane, because we want the canes to be pretty much the same size, right? So the way we do that, the best way we do that, is each cane will start into the same way. Okay, these sheets have been rolled through the thickest setting of my pasta machine. All right. So I will cut a black and a white sheet, like so. Let's remove the excess. Set that aside. All right, now what I will do is cut a nice straight edge first from each of the sheets, like so. And I didn't really have to use the ruler, just sitting here in my hands. And what I'm going to do is make each of these 6 inches. So we're going to start with 6 and 6. Okay. And basically, each of the canes will start with this volume of clay. Okay. Now you'll see that some of these other canes, for instance, let's say this guy, there's actually more black in here than white. This will become clear later. All right, so let's take one and just place it on top of the other. All right, that's what it looks like. Thickest setting. Each piece measures 2 inches by 6 inches. Okay, now I like jelly rolls with a fair amount of revolutions. In other words, if I were to proceed with the rolling part of our program, then there would be very few revolutions in this jelly roll. it would be bold and big. But I like having a little bit more than that. And so I am going to take and thin this sheet. Now, which pasta machine do I use? Well, you know what? I'm going to put the white inside, the black on the outside. Found a little piece of plastic. Okay, get rid of that. And so it's really hard to make that decision because, believe me, a machine dedicated to white clay, is going to put white clay on black clay if you roll it through, and vice versa. So I'm not going to concern myself too terribly much with that. And I am going to clean underneath the rollers and roll this through the machine that is nearest to me. All right, so I've cleaned the machine by taking a paper towel and running it underneath the rollers and running it. So let me roll this through setting number 1, which is what each of these sheets is rolled through. And now this is what we have. All right, now this cane was made by folding this over and rolling. So I want you to bear that in mind because I'm going to thin the sheet further just to show you the difference in the scale of the pattern. So I'm resetting the machine to setting number 2. And now it is longer and it is thinner. This is the edge, of course, that was placed on the rollers. Okay, so let's make the cane at this point. I'm going to take one end, pull it over to the other. And slowly, I'm bending the clay. You see, the black clay is stiffer than the white. I did not soften it to match. And I did that on purpose because should it crack, I'd like to be able to tell you whether that's important or not in that particular situation. All right, so I haven't done it completely, but now I'm just going to flatten the fold. Now let's look at what we've got. So this is what we have so far, and there's no cracking, just a bit of cracking there. All right, now at the open end, at the end where the two ends meet, you can see that it's not perfect. So this, to create this, you see how the end of the jelly roll just sort of merges into the round cane. I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to cut an angle like that. This will make it easier to integrate this end into this cane. Now, if I just left it blunt like that, what would happen is this blunt edge would push against the cane as I rolled, and probably the line here would go up and it would come back in because the clay's got to go somewhere. It's going to go somewhere. So this is an instance where too much clay can be cut away, and you get a much better result. Okay. So let's start rolling. Just patting it a bit. Now, this is, of course, the folded edge. And when you begin, just take your time. Slowly pull it over. Because what you don't want is you don't want a great big hole in the middle of your cane. And that can happen if you fold. In other words, at this end, I'm sort of pushing the clay back into itself like a handkerchief edge, not like a hem. Okay. If I were to fold, I'd probably have a nice hole in the center of my cane. Okay. I tell my students all the time, this is not a race. It's not necessary to move really fast. And I'll tell you I can't think of an instance where moving fast is better than moving slow. Okay, so now I want you to be aware of something. Okay, since the black clay is a bit harder than the white, you see that the outer edge of the jelly roll, this is the inner and that is the outer. Well, as I'm pulling and rolling, what is happening here is that outer edge, that outer black clay, is being expected to stretch. It's stretching as it's curling like that. And that's another reason you want to move slow, because you're going to give that clay a chance to catch up. If you move too fast, it will crack on you, maybe. Okay? So there is no benefit to moving fast, and there is much or a lot of benefit to taking your time and moving a little slower. Okay, so at this point, when the cane starts developing, becomes larger, right? It was very tiny when I was first pulling like this, but now it's larger, which means the clay on the outside is required to stretch less. So I can move a bit faster here. Okay, so let's roll this in like so. Now the goal is to have a round cane. And this isn't perfectly round, is it? It's round, and then it goes out a little, and then it comes back in. So this is going to have to be smoothed over. And the way you do that is just by rolling. Just by rolling a bit. All right, let's cut and see what we have for cane number 1. Here is the balanced jelly roll. Now, as I'm pulling out, see where the split is? Well, that's from the 2 layers of white coming together. So what I will do is compress and reduce the cane a bit further so that the white is more compressed and more together, because right now it's not. So, but I will wait until later because we're going to probably reduce each of the canes to some degree so that they are the same size. All right, so that's cane number 1. Here's another one I made. Now, I use these a lot in my work, and they're kind of a staple in my studio. So let me prepare for cane number 2, which is the broken jelly roll. And this is a variation on that very thing. Okay, I'm going to prepare. We're going to make this one. All right, so here you see the clay that I'm going to use for this next cane, this one. And it's the same volume. So this is 2 by 6 rolled through the thickest setting of the pasta machine of black and of white. I'm going to need less white, but I need more black. So I've rolled some of the leftover black from another cane, and this is the same thickness as the others. Now, when I make this cane, I actually make it sort of close to this scale and size. So you can see that, it's not so easy to see. If you look, the white broken line is thinner than this by quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is take each of these sheets and re-roll them through the pasta machine. I will roll them through setting number 2. Let's take a look at what that's like. There is setting number 2, and here is the thickest setting, so you can see it's quite a bit thinner. All right, but I'm going to make it thinner yet. So I'm going to roll it through 3. Okay, so that's the new thickness. You can see it is a lot thinner, of course. Now, let's talk a little bit for a moment about the pasta machine. Pasta machines have an ideal setting. All settings are not created equal. And the reason for that is because the gears of the pasta machine, the way the settings work is gearing. So let's say at the thickest setting, the gears are like this, far apart. Let's say at the thinnest setting, the gears are jammed up together very tight. It's at setting 2 or 3 that the gears mesh the best. So when you're conditioning your clay, when you're doing a lot of work with the machine, and you can, then you should work through setting 2 or 3 of your machine. All right, so my 2 black sheets have been rolled through setting 3. I'm going to take this to my white machine, and I will be back. Okay, I'm back. Now, the way this is built, let us take a little piece off of this one, and I am going to take a very tiny, because this is going to be the end that we start rolling up from. So the little pieces of white clay on the black clay will probably be smaller. All right, so then I'm just going to position it on the sheet. And when you're dealing with something as thin as this, and I'll do it with the next piece, which is a very thin slice of the black clay. I'm going to take that, I'm going to put it right up against it. And I can't get my fingers in there to sort of loosen the clay. And because it's so thin, bending the blade or angling the blade forward doesn't work quite so well. But what does work is just ever so slightly pulling the blade back, and you'll feel the clay release from the blade. So let's do that again. Then just slide it up against the piece of clay before, then take and just pull the blade back toward you, and you will leave these very thin strips of clay on this sheet rather than on your blade. All right, so let's continue. The goal is not to make these pieces the same thickness. It's to vary them, both the black and the white. Okay. We're not looking for total uniformity here. We're looking for variations. All right, so you know what? I think you get the picture. So I will continue. And, as I go from this end to that, I will be cutting larger, the scale increases. So the pieces become a little bit longer. You can see in the cane how that happens. All right, so I will stop again and I'll show you what the progress is. Okay, so I am moving along. Now, you have to be a little patient with this. It does take time. And it is at this point that it'd be really easy to say, oh, I'm just going to make the pieces bigger. So I cover. It'd be good if you resisted that temptation. Believe me, I understand that temptation. I do. But if I give in to it, I might not be very happy. I think I gave in to some temptation there and there and there. Okay, so anyway, this particular cane is going to be, I think, scaled even smaller than this one. I could be wrong about that. I make so many of these. All right, so I'm still putting the tiny slices in. But now, every now and then, I'm throwing a big one in like that. Okay, so let me move on, and I will check back in. Phew, I'm done. I made it. Now I need a nap. Just kidding. Okay, so this is the amount of white I have left. So basically, this amount of white is what I used in black, because now I have a layer of that original black clay topped with a layer of black and of white. Okay. Now I'm working on paper because I might have to move it, and it's not so easy. This is thinner. What if it gets stuck on my work surface and then I have to get it off? So this is an instance where it's just easier to work on paper directly. Okay, so the next thing I have to do, because I've got all these separate pieces, don't I? They're all separate little slices of black and white. Let's join them. I'm going to use my acrylic rod and just roll. And you can see that I'm rolling perpendicular to all the little strips. Da, da, da. Da, 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 da. Okay, so I can still feel a little bit of lumpiness there. That's not a huge problem. Doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. I can put a little pressure on it, though. Like that. Ooh. Okay. Phew. Okay, now we're ready to roll it up. How am I going to roll this up? Okay, so I'm rolling from this end to this end. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to angle this cut a little. I'm going to get rid of this black clay at the end. There's a lot of black clay. So I'm going to get rid of some of it, not all of it, because I will take that and kind of pull it up. You see what I'm doing here? I'm just sort of pulling it up. Now, I could probably make my life a bit simpler as well. I like simplifying. Shall we simplify? Okay, let's simplify. By tapering this further, it will alter the shape of that a bit, but it's going to get altered anyway. So I might as well have some control over it. All right. So let's do it. Once again, as I did before, it's the same start, the same sort of handkerchief edge start to the cane like that. Just slowly kind of coaxing it over and slowly rolling so that I give that black clay on the base a chance to stretch as it starts curling. Gotta stretch, gotta stretch. Okay. Got to stretch. You can do it, you can do it. Now, one thing I did not do that is also an option would have been to soften the black clay more, because I did not use any softener with the black clay. It is conditioned as it was mixed, all right? Softening clay is not difficult. There are products to do just that. I've got a conditioning bar, you throw some of that in, boom, clay is softer. I have something called Blackout, which actually takes scrap clay, turns it into black. It's also a softener. You can pull that in. So why didn't I do that? I did not do that because when it comes to cutting the finished clay, to slicing the finished clay with this here blade, I get a much cleaner slice out of a clay that is stiffer. So I am doing a little more work, being a little more careful through this part of the process so that at the end of the day, when I cut the cane, I get much nicer slices, all right? So it's just kind of a sacrifice. Now, as I'm rolling, I'm seeing some tiny little imperfections like that. And part of it is because I believe it's because the clay, that black clay, is actually stuck to the paper. Remember, I rolled it like that. So I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to just peel that paper off. Like so. Okay, because I really don't need it anymore. And because I think that's what was happening. As I'm rolling, the paper is pulling back on the clay, right? And as it's pulling back on the clay, it is tearing the clay just a bit, all right? Now, this is also, I mean, I'm probably going to get some of that anyway, because once again, I'm making this clay stretch in kind of an extreme curl, right? It happens less as I work my way down because the diameter of the cane increases. This is not a huge problem, not in this cane. Now, in another cane, it might be. In another cane that has an image that would really not, that would suffer from these minute cracks, the quality of the cane would change. Then you have to make another decision. Then you decide on whether you want to soften the clay to avoid that. So, but you see, as I'm rolling, because the diameter is increasing, I'm not getting any cracking because I'm saying, okay, clay, you can relax. You don't have to make that bend. I'm going easy on you now. And the clay is saying, thank you. Thanks, Mom. Okay, so this is the odd end. So I'm just going to cut it. All right, just like that. Okay, I can't help myself. I hum, I talk. It's not just the animals wandering through. I will try to control myself. All right, look. Woohoo. Let's take a slice. Oh, look. Ta-da. So let's look at the 3 scales. I'm glad I didn't give up. I like this one. So this is the finest, this is medium, and this is very coarse. So I rolled the base sheet thinner here than I did here, and certainly than I did here. So you have control over the pattern to a very great degree by what you start with in this particular cane. Okay? Now let's look at this one. This is essentially the same cane, only there's a lot more black, right? Instead of making those very, very thin little pieces of black and sticking them up against the larger, slightly thicker pieces of white, you can see there's a lot more black in here. So the lines are broken, but they're spaced farther apart. This almost looks like some kind of cobblestone, you know, and I like it very much. It has a more mosaic look than this. Okay, so I hope you understand. You have the control. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is this. I love this cane. Let me set up and we'll move on. All right, so here's our basic setup for this cane. I called it the black hole cane, but really it was created after I saw this beautiful meteor shower, the Lyriad meteor shower, something. It was, photographers were out in droves. They're taking pictures of this beautiful thing. And what it looked like were all these streaking, beautiful lines across the horizon. It's a very circular pattern. And I thought, I want to make something like that in clay. And so this is my homage to meteor showers. All right, but blackout, the black hole cane, because Lord Almighty, I cannot spell Lyriad. Okay, so we're starting with the same 2x6 black, 2x6 white. Now, are you afraid? Are you afraid I'm going to make you work at scale? Remember how we worked at scale? This is very little reduction here. Very little reduction. You kind of made this at this size. Are you scared I'm going to make you do that? Because you would have 10 miles of this clay out over here, and it would be like that thin, and you'd be layering things up. And you know what? You would hate me. Well, no. You can relax. I'm not going to make you do that. Now, why did we have to do that here? Well, if you look at this cane, you can see where all those little white pieces I put on, the little strips, they're nice and squared off at the ends. You see how they're just squared off, the black and the white? If you look closely at this cane, you can see that the ends aren't really perfectly squared off. Sometimes they go to a point this way, they go to a point this way. It's very unpredictable what's going to happen at those ends along each of those little strips I put on. I wanted it to look like this. That's why we worked pretty much at the finished size. Here, no, I don't really care about that. So what we're going to do is we are going to work the thickest. See, you can relax. So let's start. Now, the one thing you do want to do is every single piece is like this. See how skinny? Every single piece is going to be really thin. Yeah? Okay, so maybe you will hate me at some point, because you're going to be putting these little tiny skinny pieces on. Yeah, you will. It's kind of hard to start sometimes because they are so skinny. Come on, let go. it lets go. It does. And if you find that it starts sticking more than you like, inspect your blade. Just take a little paper towel or Kleenex or something. Just wipe it off. And remove some of the oil from the clay. Okay. Now, you can probably wipe it with alcohol too, but I don't really bother with that, and I don't really want to introduce alcohol and water, anything that's going to soften the clay or create problems later. So I tend to work with a dry blade and struggle a bit at the beginning, but as you build up across, it becomes a smaller problem. But yes, you want to make each of these really skinny. Really skinny, okay? So because this is about as interesting as watching your socks dry, I think you have seen enough. So let me continue, and I will be back when it's done. So I've progressed another inch or so. So, as I'm working, I'm thinking, maybe this is an easier way. Look at how thin that, thin. Okay, so I'm going to really push it against that slab. I'm pushing it against the clay layer. Ta-ta, and just slowly peel it away. Just do what works for you. Okay, push it and release. So you're armed with several strategies to get these little strips of clay. Oh, see? Wants to pull back on the blade. That white clay is a little stickier than the black, so that may happen too. But I think you have several strategies for dealing with it if you find that the little strips want to stick. Thicker like this, see, this is actually, relative to the others, rather thick. I can do the push the clay or pull the blade toward me. When it's really, really skinny like that, push it up against and maybe slowly release it. Now we've got another thing here, and the black clay is harder than the white. So it's slightly easier to do the push this way, and then pull the blade away. However, when the clay is of a certain width, even the white clay, you can just pull the blade away. All right, so I'll be back. Okay, done. This is what I have left over in white, and this is what I have left over in black. Doink, doink. Now, as we did before, I've got to flatten this just to join the pieces. Like so. Da, 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 da. All right. Now, we're not going to roll it up like this. No. We are going to take this off the paper. And this guy looks a little like piano keys. I'm going to put this edge on the rollers, and I'm going to roll this down through about setting number 7. I'm moving everything to make room. Oh, it's going to be really long. Okay, so let's start at setting 1, and then I will roll it down through 7, and it will get long that way. Ta-ta. Now I'm resetting my machine. I'm going up to 2. Getting long. How about setting number 4? Okay, that's through setting 4. How about setting 6? Wow! Look at that. And you know what? I'm going to stop here. You know why? Because my table, I don't have room. Okay, so I'm draping this end over my pasta machine. And I'm going to start rolling here. Now, this is also another reason why I didn't really soften my clay, because you can see how long this strip is. It's like draped across my table. And at this thinness, if it's too sticky and it folds back on itself, well, you might never get it off. Okay, so same strategy, just be patient, push that clay back into itself. Okay, and this really is, at this at this thinness, it is like a hanky. Okay, so that's good. So just roll. Roll, 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 roll. You'll notice I don't even trim the end for this particular cane, because I don't find it necessary. It's so thin. All right, let's roll, roll, roll. Roll, roll, roll. And I'm going to take a cut off the end. There's the end. There's the cane. Let me cut a bit further in and show you what we have. All right, and if you really look at the ends, you can see that they're not squared off, right? But that wasn't important. I rather like when you get these long stringy pieces coming out, and that happens because of the way we worked. Okay, so that is the black hole cane. So this is what we have so far. Jelly roll, broken line, and the black hole. Now we're going to move on. I feel like I made another cane. No, it's just 4 canes. We're going to move on to this guy. All right, so let me prepare, and I'll be back. All right, so now we're going to move on to the snail type jelly roll. Now, what you see here are 2 of basically the same cane. However, they do look different, don't they? This is, it has more revolutions than this. This is a very kind of chubby, bold snail. And it's not that I don't like it, just that we're going to make this one first. Now, I believe there is definitely in this one, there's more white than black. You know, all of our canes have not been equally black and white. More black here, more black here. You know, actually, this might have been very close to the same. This cane has equal parts of black and white. This cane, I believe, has more white. So I've started with the 2 sheets that we've started with before. 2 inches by 6 inches rolled through the thickest setting of the pasta machine. Now, what I'm going to try to do is make a bullseye cane that is this size, okay? Which means that I may in fact have to add more white, because the final wraparound will be this one, which is the same black we've been using or starting with. Actually, the white we've been starting with. Okay, but I believe that if I can get there, I will be, actually, you know what? This is what we're going to do. I'm just going to take this and wrap it around and use this to determine how much white I need. I'm going to do a little bit more because this cane is slightly reduced. So what I want is white to fill this space. Okay? Yeah, that worked out much better. Now, when I'm doing my cane work, I usually am not this particular about the amounts of clay because they don't really have to be. But for a class like this, yes, I think it's important because you have to be able to make your canes the same size. We're going to need that uniformity when we make our final necklace. Okay. Now, that is basically all the white that I used for this cane. Right? That's it. And that's what it looks like without the black. So just kind of roughly, I'm going to wrap it around. And clearly there isn't enough white. I've rolled more white. Now, I don't know how much this is. 2 inches by approximately, 2 inches by another 6 inches. So let me start to wrap this around. Okay. And let's see whether this is too much or too little. Wrap it around, and it is very close. Very close. Let me slice off a bit. Yeah, it's really close. There we go. All right, close enough. So this is the volume of white, and it is 11 and, I don't know, I'm not, is it 11 and a half inches? Approximately. It's close. So let me actually take a little tool. And I've got to integrate that edge into the hole, so sometimes it's just faster to use something like this and even just whip it over like that. I just want to move the clay. And if I did this to do that, it could take a very long time. So by directly addressing it with a tool like my brush, I can accomplish the task faster. I have black clay on my hands. Okay, that's looking good. Now let's wrap. And this is called a bullseye cane. Another one of those wonderful basic canes that you will find if you get into caning. You're probably going to make quite a few of them. Bring the ends together. I don't know how that happened. I have a little cut in the sheet. I might have sliced it. Let me just inspect that. I think it's fine. Not sure why that happened. Could have been a blade accident. Okay. So here's our basic black and white bullseye cane. Now this has to be reshaped, and the basic shape is going to be tapering out like this, okay? So what I will do is just start to pull a point out like so, you see? All right, now I'm going to take the heel of my hand and just push to flatten it. Turn it over, push, 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 like so. And you know, I can use my acrylic rod for this. This area here is way too thick, so I'm going to take my acrylic rod and I'm just going to flatten it like so. Might as well use a tool. And it's going to be even thinner. Thinner. Yep. Now, let me just push the ends in a bit so it's not getting out of control. Because as I'm rolling, see how much taller it's getting? So as I roll, I think I'm going to try to maintain the same height, not let it get away from me, which it certainly can do. A little bit lopsided. See, this area has no black. And I will probably just have to live with that, to tell you the truth. Okay, so this is as wide as it's going to be. So this represents the widest part of the jelly roll. Okay. All right, so let's start tapering and pulling out this way. And I wish I'd been more careful here. I was rather careless. So look at that. This is not what you want, because that represents a whole area of cane that will not be usable and will not be good. Might not be too bad because I've got the black. This black will curl back, so there will be some black on that area. It just won't be as thick. I'm just going to pull it out with my fingers. The clay is nice and soft. It's very supple. It's easy to pull. I can pull it out and it won't crack. Okay. I'm going to bring this to a taper. And when I'm doing this, I place my acrylic rod on my work surface and then I pull back on it. I roll back. Flip it over, repeat. All right, so this is the bad side, but this is the bad side. But I'm going to cut some away to show you what's happening inside. See, I'm tapering this to a point, right? So let me show you what's happening inside. Just going to cut as little as I can. The tip is what I want. All right, so as I've reshaped, you can see that the sheet on the side has just gotten nice and thin like this. But as it hits that point, look at how thick it is, right? Because all that clay from the side is sort of gathering at that tip. So if I were to continue and roll this up, I would have all that black clay in the middle of the jelly roll. Kind of like this. You see that black blob there? Well, what that black blob is this extra clay here. It's got to go somewhere. Okay, so to avoid that, I am going to cut a lot of it away. With me blade. Okay, so let's just try doing a straight cut across and look at what I've cut away. It's all black. So all this would be sitting in the middle of the jelly roll. We don't really want that. Cut some more. And you can see I'm not cutting like mass amounts of clay away. Now I'm going to cut at an angle to remove some of that. Like so. Let me turn it over and let me do the same thing. So I'll try to cut some of this away right there. And you see there's quite a bit. All that would be in the middle. Okay, that's looking pretty darn good. There's going to be some of that black in the middle, but not that huge blob. That huge blob. Just a little more. So at this point, basically, I'm just kind of shaving away little bits of clay. Looking good. Now, let me roll back some of this. Make it nice and smooth. Okay. Ooh, yeah, this is going to be good. I have very good feelings about this. I do. See, so all that blobby clay at the end is gone. Now, I have to address this end. And I'm going to taper it out kind of the same way. Not as long a taper. But I definitely have to taper this end as well. There we go. Now, you know, the same thing is happening. I've got that excess black clay that is collected at the point. Am I going to cut it away? I haven't. Here, I didn't cut the excess black clay away, so I think I'm just going to leave it. I am going to taper it more than it is right now. But I'm not going to cut it away. Black clay. And the taper, of course, is not as long. You see, here's the thickest point is here, and it's tapering this distance. The thickest point is here, and it will only taper out maybe this much, from here to there. Okay. Okay, are we ready to roll? I think so. Okay, so the easiest way I have found is to start like this. Just start by trying to push the same thing. And I'm not rolling that way, I'm kind of rolling to me. To me. Not away from me, but to me. Slowly, slowly. Now this clay, I'm really asking this clay to stretch a lot over this mass of white clay, aren't I? So that means I have to go a little slower. Even slower. Giving the clay a chance to catch up and stretch. You move too fast and the clay is just, it gives up. It's like, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. Or it says, I'm going, but I'm going to give you a great big old crack. Okay. So when it's this thick too, you can try just flexing it out like so. You know, this is also helpful. The warmth of my palms is also helping. Pull it over because, you know, the clay responds to warmth. It does. Situations like this, it really likes being warm. If the clay is too cold, then, well, you're probably going to get cracks, so warm the clay as you roll. And probably holding it in my hands as I roll is helping as well. Okay. Okay, so we are getting there. All right. Yes, I am asking my clay to do a lot for me. Now, this process might be simpler with softer clay. I would not say it would not be, but there are advantages and disadvantages to each of these processes. I mean, sometimes it seems like, oh yeah, this is much easier to do this, but then you move along and it's harder to slice, or it's harder. Other things are more difficult. The more you work with clay, the more you will find out what those advantages, those pros and cons, are inherent in every clay brand. They all have something to offer, but not necessarily the same things. The advantages and the disadvantages are not necessarily the same. Okay, so there is our cute little, oh, I love it. All right, so let me make a cut. I'm gonna cut. Let me clean my blade. And here is the jelly roll, and I love it. It's a good-looking jelly roll. I like this. Clearly, I can see the spiral. Now that the canes are made, it's time for us to start making our discs, our link discs. The first thing we have to decide is the size. Mine are 1.25 inches. I'm using my cutter from my nylon cutter set. These cutters are great because they're perfectly round. They do not change. Metal ones, they can get misshapen. So I highly recommend the nylon cutters that are made like this. It's got no seam, and they're very stable. So this is what I used, and I reduced all my canes to the same diameter as my cutter. Your canes should be very close to the same size as mine, and I had to do very little reduction to make them this size, okay? If you started with the same amount of clay and you worked through the same way that I showed you, then your canes are going to be about the same size. There's going to be very little variation in their size. So to tell you the truth, you're going to have to do very little reduction if you use this cutter, 1.25 inches. Now, I think it's important, however, that I show you reduction. I mean, that is kind of the magic of Millefiori, right? So we make it big and we can reduce it. And we can reduce it without losing the detail in the cane pattern. So our goal, and obviously this is not what we made, our goal is to reduce the diameter, but to uniformly reduce it so that every element in the pattern is reduced, so that we don't just reduce the outside and forget about the inside. You know, it's a goal, and the older the cane is, the harder it is to do it, because it takes a lot more work to get the center of the cane moving. But if you don't get that center moving and you've got an old cane, what will happen is you'll probably get cracking inside, because reduction, once we start reducing, what we're doing is stretching. And something that is cold and hard doesn't stretch. And that's why we have to make the whole mass, the outside and the inside, soft and supple and stretchy. Okay? So this, as I said, is not a terribly old cane, but, you know, it's been around for a month maybe. So what I generally do is I just generally take a cane like this, a round cane, and I just start sort of jiggling it like this, because I'm telling you, very effective way of getting your clay moving is just by doing this, by taking it and gently twisting it back and forth, because twisting does get the movement to the middle of the cane. See, if I just squeeze on the outside, I'm making the outside very warm, but the only way that energy gets to the center is by ultimately the outside clay that I'm pushing on the inside. And although it does, this is much more direct, twisting. Like that. So I do a lot of twisting. No, I don't think you're going to have to do it. If you've just made your canes, you're not going to have to engage in this twisting business. I'm showing you what happens if you want to reduce an older cane. All right? Now, I'm going to place my cane on the flat side like this and start pushing at the base. And you see this, the heels of my hands down here. Now, I do this because I want the face of the cane to maintain contact with the marble tile. All right? I'm pushing. And I want that cane to maintain contact so that this face, this is the face of a cane, this is also the face, remains as flat as possible. So let's do it on this side. And I am pushing quite hard. And rotating. And trying to stay under my camera, which is remarkably difficult for me to do. Okay? It's looking good. Now I flip to the other side. And just push. And not only am I pushing in, I'm kind of pushing down as well. I can't tell you you won't lose some pattern. You're going to lose pattern. It's inevitable. It's part of the whole process. But there are ways to minimize your loss. And that's what we're trying to do here, is just minimize the amount of pattern, the amount of good cane slices that you're going to lose. But you're going to lose some anyway. Okay, so let's just twist again. A little more twisting. And reducing round canes is definitely the easiest. Square isn't too bad. Now, there are people who do reduce in odd shapes, like this whole shape, a whole flower in the shape. All right, so let's, after a little bit of twisting, we're going to return to this. So I think you can see that it isn't just one motion or one movement that is required. You're going to be doing a lot of different things to try to get that clay moving. I am a small caner. There are people who are making 10-pound canes. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just not strong enough. You have to be pretty strong to reduce a 10-pound cane. And that is not me. No upper body strength. Okay, so let's just try noodling around the middle a bit. More twisting. You know, I can kind of feel that it's hard inside. I push on it and I can just feel that it's not giving as easily or as quickly. Feels a little hard in there. So a lot more twisting just to get the clay activated. Now, what also helps sometimes is pushing in like that and pulling out. Push in, pull out, push, pull. Now, I will just push on the sides. Because as I said, when I was using my, when I was squeezing with my fingers, I could feel that there was some hardness or coldness. Not exactly hard, but I know it isn't as soft as it needs to be. So this also helps. Just bending. And it's feeling a lot softer inside now. So you can see it doesn't really take that much. To get it moving again. Of course, I have some canes that must be, oh my goodness. I have canes from my Millefiori book, and that was published in 2012, so we're talking some really old canes. And so a cane like that, those canes require a lot more work than this. But if you work a little bit harder at this, you're going to have more usable cane. You won't have as much waste. I'm not going to tell you you're not going to have any waste because you always have a little bit. Okay, this is feeling great. Great. Okay, so let me try just reducing the end a bit. Yeah, this is good. I'm not going to lose much. I am not going to lose much. And the reason I think I'm not going to lose much is this. Okay. I will lose some, but not very much. All right, let's compare. That's really good. I am almost there. I am like, we're talking. I am so close. I think I'm there. I think I am there. Okay, so let's take a look. Let me cut and see how much I lost. That one's no good. That one is a partial. Okay, I have good pattern. This is how much I lost. Only this much. And that is really good. So if you follow some of the strategies I've used here, you should lose very little pattern. Now, because the canes that we've just made are so fresh, you'll probably only have to do a little bit of this kind of thing, right? Just like that, and then take it and flatten it and take it. But honestly, that's probably as much as you're going to need to do. I just felt I had to show you reduction in something that's a little more difficult. All right, so select your cutter, reduce your canes, because then we are going to make our discs. So I'm back, and we are now ready to use our canes and make these discs, which are the links in our chain. I have to tell you, when I first designed them, this is the way I designed them. You see that edge? I never really liked that very much. But, you know, even though I've worked with clay a very long time, in my mind, I design and I figure out how it makes sense to accomplish tasks. So this was the first method, and it works. It works, it does the trick, but this bothered me, really, truly bothered me. I thought about it. I thought about a second way of doing it. Similar to the first, but not exactly the same. And this is the edge. I still don't like the edge. It still accomplishes the task. It does the job. But in my heart, I knew there was a better way. So I spent yesterday afternoon working on these and doing them and thinking about a better way and blah, blah, blah. On and on it goes. You know, every day in my studio, in any studio, is not a good day. Every day is not a good day. Some days are coal. Some days are diamonds. Yesterday was kind of a cold day. So I pushed myself away from my work table. I deleted everything I shot. I went upstairs and resolved that I would try again the next day. I get up early. 4 o'clock in the morning, my eyes open. I knew what to do. I absolutely knew what to do. I came downstairs, 4 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't even had any coffee. And I took the cane that I showed you how to reduce, and I made this. And the edge is so much nicer. It's just so much more perfect. And the added benefit is this is really much easier to do. And that's what I'm going to show you. I've worked with clay 30 years. This still happens. This still happens. Make something that's actually quite simple more complicated. Be unhappy with it. Walk away. And a better solution usually comes. Thing is, you can't cling to what you think is going to work to the point where you don't leave yourself open to the actual and better solutions. Nothing is so precious. The footage I shot yesterday, I spent, 4 hours shooting and reshooting and trying to get it right. Well, that was 4 hours out of my life, but the only thing worse than deleting it would have been to keep it and put it out there and not think about the better way. Okay, so there's a lesson for you. Nothing is so precious. Nothing we make in clay is so precious that it can't be set aside, and nothing that we think is set in stone. And in the back of your mind, I think you always have to think, there's a possible better way. Okay, I made this one too, so I'm going to show you the difference. Okay, there's still a little line down there, but oh my heavens, it's so much neater and tidier and better than the other ones I made. So much. And easier. So having said all that, we are going to start. Okay, so first I'm just going to take a little cut off of here just to kind of even it out. All right, it's not a whole slice that goes in my scrap bin. If you are new to cane work and slicing canes, then what I would like you to do is to take a cylinder of scrap clay and practice. Now here's a cylinder, I'll show you. Okay, this is just some of my scrap clay. You're going to position that cane sort of perpendicular to your body, right? I'm over here. Dong, dong, dong. Here's the cane. It's perpendicular. When you cut, don't think you have to cut fast, because you absolutely do not. My camera is a little crooked, so I'm positioning this cylinder so that it's more perpendicular to the frame. All right. Cut slowly. And as you cut, watch the blade as it goes through the clay. Okay? Ooh, hole. Now, the goal here is for you to cut slices that are between 1.5 and 2 millimeters. All right? Closer to 1.5. If you cut 2 millimeters, not a big deal. It's just that each of your slices is going to be thicker. So let me see if I can sort of aim there. And now watch. Slowly, I'm cutting through. Now don't move that. That first slice kind of establishes an angle. And if you're like me, you kind of cut at the same angle. So here we go. A little bit thicker at the bottom, but that's okay. It's not terrible. Not terrible. And part of the reason why it's thicker at the bottom is because it squashes slightly. So if I just squeeze a bit and pull it out like that, then I restore more of the roundness to the cylinder or the cane. In this case, this is not perfectly round, and that's why it looks the way it does. Okay, so you want to practice just a little bit. Try again. Cut slowly. Let's look at this one. It's a little bit thinner here than it is on the other side. Now, a slice like this is not really usable for our purposes because it is too thin. So if you're new to this, chances are you're going to be cutting slices that are thicker than need be, but that's better than cutting too thin. Okay, let's do it again. And see, I'm not moving that because the act of cutting is also kind of pulling the sides this way, and yeah. So don't move it. Cut all your slices first. Okay. All right, that's good. You see the uniform thickness of the slice? Might be a tad thinner here, but not thin like this. This was like, hello, paper. Okay, so do some practice. Practice a bit, but I want to show you what I mean. You see cutting? You see how it's like slightly dipped here and then it comes out? That is going to happen with every slice, and that's why you don't move it, because it happens sort of uniformly, if you understand what I mean. And if you cut 2 slices and then you pick it up and you set it aside, you're going to have to do what I did to begin with, which is like you're going to have to roll it, and you're going to have to take 1 slice to establish that angle and set yourself up. And it can be very thin, but you should cut a slice. All right. So now we're going to embed our jump rings. Okay, here are our 4 canes. Now, my nails are now blue because this is actually a pickup shot. What happened was, the other way I had done this, I wore this, and look what happened. It broke. The jump ring actually opened here, and on this one, on this side, the jump ring actually pulled right out of the clay. So, you know, I'm not that hard on my jewelry, and this necklace was not yanked or pulled abruptly or suddenly that would make that open. It indicated to me that there is a problem with the construction. So I thought about it, and I think I know how to improve it and make the general linkage more sturdy, durable, and less likely to break. That's why I'm doing a pickup shot. Okay, so let's get started. Now, the canes are lined up. Now, here's the thing about canes. You've already practiced slicing, and that's really good exercise for you. It's something that is beneficial. It will be beneficial to you. When you cut from a cane, the slices that are most alike are adjacent to each other. In other words, the slice I cut, and I'm aiming for between 1 1/2 and 2 millimeters, and cut, and cut, these 2 slices are most like each other. These 2 slices, this slice, for instance, is more like this one than, let's say, the one at the end. Now that makes sense, doesn't it? So when you're making these links, I want you to arrange them in pairs like that. So now I know these 2 will form 1 link. Let's cut these. Now you're going to need a total of 20 links, or 5 of each pattern. Now I will straighten it out a bit, like so. And these 2, actually this one is not a good one. See how skinny it is there? That is too thin. So what I'm going to do is cut another one. And this is much better. Just going to tug on it just a bit to round it out, because of course whenever you slice, the bottom flattens just a bit. So here's another pair. These two will be together and form a link. So I don't have to cut more. I think you get the picture. All right, now it's important that when we put these in, and we're still going to use the oval jump rings, that you find the exact center line, and that one ring is at one end of the center line and the other ring is at the other. That makes sense. The way we do that is, remember this cutter? Well, these slices, these canes, excuse me, are pretty much that size. So I'm going to go with this cutter, and I'm going to make myself a little template. Pencil. All I'm going to do is draw around. Like so. Now I will fold it in half, folding the pencil line back on itself. And the crease represents the mid-line in the slice. Okay? So what I will do, I'm going to move these two off to the side. Move that one too. So let's just take our paper template and sort of center it on the slice. Do the best you can. I'm now going to take a little needle and I will pierce 2 spots along the line close to the edge of the cane. And that is where these 2 dots are, where our jump ring is going to be positioned. Now, when you place the jump ring on the clay, I want you to take the opening and place that opening right on the dot or on the line, okay? Just like that. So that if it gets pulled or tugged, that wire has got to go all the way around and out. The problem with this was that the opening was way too close to the edge. So it just, boom, came out. We do not want that to happen. Now I'm going to repeat. Same thing on the other side. Just like so. Okay? And you just have to leave enough of the wire exposed so that you'll be able to get another jump ring, a thicker one, through 2 of them. Okay? This one might be a little far in. So I'm just going to gently tug it out, like so. Now I will take my brass rod, and I'm just going to push it right into that clay, like that. Okay, I've just embedded it into the clay. Now, before I had used liquid clay. I believe that PolyPaste is going to be a much better thing to use. Filler, let's just call it a filler, because that's kind of what it is. I'm going to take some PolyPaste on a brush, and I'm just going to put it right on top of the wire, like so. Yes, it seems like there's quite a bit of it. Thing is, I really want to make sure that this wire stays embedded in that clay. I want to make it as hard as possible for that wire to escape. I'm going to take the second slice, and I am just going to place it right on top, just like that. Oops. Okay, take the brass rod and roll over. Now let's turn it over. And roll over again. Now what I'm seeing here, a little bit of clay there. I'm not too concerned about that. That liquid, or rather that PolyPaste, I'm also not that concerned about that. This is fine. I'll be able to get the jump ring through. I can tell that that space is large enough. This one might be a little small, so I'm going to hold and just pull it out gently. Just tug it out a bit until I've exposed what I think is enough for this slightly thicker jump ring to go through. You see? And if it's a problem as well, if you think it's a problem, you can also take something like a scalpel or a craft knife and just push that raw clay in and make the space that way as well. Like so. And it looks tidy. It doesn't look odd or strange. And I know that I'll be able to get that jump ring into that space. All right, so let's texture. I'm going to take my sponge and place it on under the cane, or rather the link, and then I just press it back on, and I'm just going to press and texture both sides at once. Now, this is saving me some energy and time, but it is also pressing that clay around the jump rings. And that is a good thing. Okay, so let's take a look, and let's take a look at the edge. And that looks very good to me. It's very neat and tidy. I can make it more round by just gently tugging on it. Just like so. Yes, I felt I had to do it over because this is actually much more secure. I know it is. All right, so this is ready to be cured. So what you will do is repeat the process with the remainder of your slices and make your links. Once you've made the links, we're ready to cure. That comes next. You see this? When you bake it, I have a tile underneath. I have just wrapped paper towel over, and I just place them on the paper towel. And this is exactly how they're cured. Now, the paper towel will prevent any shiny spots on the clay, and that's why I have it. If you want, you can use polyester batting instead, or even cotton batting, although the polyester batting is actually better. So let me continue. You'll need 5 of each in order to make the necklace. Okay, moving on. Now it's time to cure. You can see I've got all my pieces on my tile with paper towel on top. Curing. Now, I don't know what clay you're using. You know what clay I'm using. And I just feel I must tell you that my clay, Kato Polyclay, has more difficulty handling white and translucent than some of the other brands, I think. I mean, I don't use the others, but I am well aware that if my clay is exposed to temperatures that are elevated above the recommended temperatures, that the clay can change color, it can shift. This white could turn into, somewhere between, not exactly ecru, it just tans. It's like the clay tans. Now, I don't want my clay to tan, not for this. So I will cure these in my home oven, like my big oven, the oven I bake in. And that is absolutely fine these days because all polymer clays do not have phthalates in them anymore. Now, the phthalates were the ingredient that created problems if the clay burnt. The phthalates released a gas that you didn't want to breathe. And so we took it out. But taking the phthalates out also altered the chemical formulation. And one of the things that happened, that, by the way, we are working very hard on now, is that the whites and the translucents have a tendency, they're more temperature sensitive. So I'm just telling you that because if you're using my clay, you're going to want to use your home oven. I'm assuming that if you have a convection oven and a toaster oven and a home oven, that your home oven is probably the most accurate. In my case, it certainly is. I use my convection oven for a lot of things, most of my work, but when it comes to the whites, I'm taking my clay upstairs and putting it in my home oven. Now, what temperature am I going to bake this at? Now, first of all, I don't preheat. I go directly into a cold oven. I set the temp to 300, and I am going to set my timer to 30 minutes. Now, I know that my oven upstairs reaches temp, the correct temp, in between 5 and 7 minutes, and I've got 300 degrees. So that's plenty long enough to cure. So that is what I'm going to do. Now, once it's cured, I take it out of the oven immediately, and I dump it into cold water, just a bowl of cold water, to arrest the curing. All right? Now, you're going to follow your manufacturer's instructions. You're going to do whatever you do with the clay that you're using. But I just had to tell you what I'm doing. So I am going upstairs with my clay. I'm going to cure, and then I'll be back. Now it's time to assemble our necklace. Now, I want you to look at the difference between the jump ring in the disc and the jump ring I'm using. The jump ring that will connect the discs is quite a bit thicker, and it's a larger disc. And of course, because the wire is thicker, it's more durable. It's a little stronger. And I think that's kind of important because these pieces will be twisting and turning, this and that, and you don't want the ring that connects them to open too easily. Now, we're using ovals. I always use oval, never round. The reason for that is that round rings continuously turn, okay? And because they always turn, it's really just a matter of time until the opening of the ring comes in contact with, for instance, this jump ring, and then there's a very good chance that a tug on it, or even just gravity alone, is going to be enough for that opening to open, and then boom, they're apart. That doesn't happen with ovals because ovals do not rotate like that. And I'll show you what I mean. Now, if you've not used jump rings before, I will show you. I'm going to grip the jump ring one side with my pliers. The opening is right there. Take my other pliers, grab the other side, and twist to open. Now, when you close it, you twist it back like that. Back into position, right? So let me do that again. You twist to open, you see? And then you twist to close. Never like that. You'll never get them back together exactly the same. Okay, so I've opened and I have one. Now I will put two on. Then I will grasp the other side and close it. And then you want to look at it too, make sure that you've got it closed. All right, so here's the why the jump rings don't rotate. Gravity. There is the opening. If there's any tension at all on the piece, then this is the way oval jump rings always seat themselves. They never seat themselves sideways, so that opening remains on the side always. Always. It's impossible for it to function any other way, really. So that's why we use ovals and not rounds. Now I will continue and I will put all the pieces together, and I'm just going in order, this one, this one, this one, this one, back to this one, this one, this one, this back. And you know what? When I'm done, I'll show you. And here is the finished necklace. You know, I love it. First of all, it's very light. It's much lighter than the others. The construction is much better, looks better, and it has the added benefit of that sort of weightlessness. It's a pretty big, strong look, but when you wear it, you're probably not going to hardly feel it on your body, which is perfect, perfect. So it took a while to get there in terms of making those link discs. This was the first one. And what I learned from this one is you got to make it two-sided, definitely. Because when you wear it, inevitably the black back is going to show somewhere. So you avoid that by making it two-sided. Then I made this. I made it two-sided, but boy, oh boy, did these guys get thick. Well, some of them got very thick. But the edges were still rather sloppy. I did not like that. I don't like sloppy clay. So, you know, I didn't really see the solution until I spent a long afternoon in my studio getting, well, I got a lot done, but I deleted it all. And then pulling myself away, having a nice rest, and the solution came to me. You know what? It's fantastic. It is fantastic. So you can apply the same construction, of course, to any of the canes that you make. They don't have to be round. They could be any shape. But I think it's wonderfully useful and quite a simple way to make a necklace. Very simple. You don't have to drill holes in any beads or anything like that. It didn't take me any time to make the discs, and actually putting the necklace together didn't take long either. So thank you for joining me in class. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. And you know what? I hope you use these techniques and make all these different jelly rolls. You know, the jelly roll, basic, but there's so much more to it than just two pieces of clay slapped together and rolled up from one end. And in this class, we explored some of them. So I think that's all. I think that's all for now. So until we meet again, I'm Donna Kato. Bye.